I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. After listening to this quote, we bet most of you know who we're going to be talking about today, right, TikTakers? Martin Luther King Jr., known as Martin Luther King, was born on January 15th of 1929 in Atlanta. He was an American pastor and activist who fought for the civil rights of African Americans. His parents were Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta William King. He studied in public schools and graduated high school when he was 15 years old. In 1945, he graduated in sociology from Atlanta's Morehouse College, and in 1951, graduated in theology from the Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. Finally, in 1955, he obtained his doctorate in philosophy. While living in Boston, he met Coretta Scott, with whom he married in 1953. Together they had 4 children: Yolanda King, Martin Luther King III, Dexter Scott King, and Bernice King. Just like his father and grandfather, he became a Baptist pastor, and in 1954, he was in charge of a church in the city of Montgomery, Alabama. At the same time, he joined the executive committee of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Just 1 year later, several racist incidents led him to lead an entire social movement. One of the most well-known incidents is the case of Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat for a white person on a bus and ended up in jail. As a response to this, Martin Luther King led a boycott against the public buses in Montgomery. That protest continued for more than a year, until the Supreme Court of the United States declared unconstitutional the law which demanded racial segregation in Montgomery's public transportation. But even with that victory, the violence was extreme, and the very house of Martin Luther King was attacked. But the fight didn't end there, of course, and Martin kept demonstrating he was determined to achieve real equality in society. He went to different countries and became more and more known. In 1957, he was chosen as the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a Christian and pacifist organization with the mission of actively participating in the movement for civil rights. After participating in several protests and boycotts in Birmingham, Alabama, he was incarcerated in 1963. From prison, he wrote a letter explaining the motives of the protests and received support from the then President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. Martin was liberated 1 week later, and the protests in Birmingham ended in June of 1963, when public spaces were opened for African Americans. On August 28th of that same year, he delivered a speech which made history: "I have a dream." That very day, he also spearheaded a massive march in Washington, where more than 250,000 people participated. They demanded freedom and employment, and a just society with no discrimination of any kind. Once the march was finished, they were received by President Kennedy, who committed to accelerate the implementation of his new policies against segregation in schools and against unemployment, which specially affected the Black community. In 1964, Martin Luther King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Unfortunately, the good intentions of the president, who was killed months later, nor Martin's groundbreaking speech were enough to achieve a just society. Violent and discriminatory acts against the African American population kept occurring, and the situation was very difficult for them. Martin, inspired by Gandhi, always defended pacifist actions, kept participating in manifestations and protests, and was incarcerated in many occasions. And sadly, his life had a tragic end, as he was killed on April 4th of 1968, which sparked a wave of incidents in the entire country. Martin Luther King is a symbol of the Black community's fight for civil rights. Many years after his death, his message is still very necessary, and there's still a long way to go until we reach real equality. It's important for us to make the world a better place to live in, and it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, TikTakers. We are all equal and have the same rights. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next episode.